TGF, everyone. How's it going today? It's Friday. I'm going to do something a little different today. I'm going to be like as if I was a mechanic at a saw shop, which I have been. And we're going to work on this 36 Husqvarna. This is my friend Ernie's saw. Ernie used to kart race and still comes out and helps out at the kart track once in a while. And he lives just up in the neighborhood here from me. I think he moved here from the mainland area a few years back. So I got some parts from him, and I told him I'd tune up this saw for him. It's been a little while, sorry about that, Ernie, but today we're going to do it. So when I work on a saw, especially a consumer one, you know, like the 36 is pretty much Husky's smallest one they had, right? It's 36 cc's, kind of a Poulan Husqvarna, right? We all know that, hey? They're green, you got the wild things and all that. They're all pretty much based on the same motor design, just different color and different moldings a little bit. So first of all, I do is physically look at the saw and check it over and see what you can see, anything physically wrong with it right now. Right now I notice the chain brake is way far ahead. The chain's turning, so it's not activated. And it doesn't pull back to reset it. So there's something going on in here. So let's start off with taking the bar and chain off. I always do, so that way you can inspect the bar and chain, inspect your clutch and whatnot at the same time. I get my beautiful snap-on wrench here. This is a swivel head 13 mil. It's just a perfect bar wrench. I know people got those scrunches and stuff like that. They work fine too, but whatever you have. Hey, I got one of those actually. Yeah, right there. Knew I had one. So anyways, let's get this bar and chain off, and then we'll talk about it as I'm taking it off. These saws, like I say, they weren't very expensive, but when they ran good, they ran okay. A lot of the problems with them is people let them sit around, or consumers use them with poor mixed fuel and dull chains. Very common for consumers, right? I think that's zoomed in enough for us today. Anyways, I'll get in closer if I got to show you something. So let's get the chain brake off. And a lot of times these saws, they sit around a lot of times. Consumers buy them and, you know, they only use them a couple times and they sit. Okay, well, Ernie's chain brake is missing. The chain brake band's missing in here. So I'll see if he wants to put one in it. If not, we're just going to proceed and get this thing tuned up and see how it goes. Okay, so let's set that aside. I usually have a box behind me. I throw the big stuff in as I'm working on it, and all the little nuts and bolts I always put into a nice little box or a magnetic tray or something so you don't lose anything. I've done thousands of saws, so I know where every screw goes. Okay, clutch looks good. Sprocket wear looks good. Not a problem there. It's not been all real beat up. Looks like the chains maybe come off once maybe and nicked the old chain catcher here, but not too bad. It feels like it's got an okay compression, but normally consumer saws, I'll check compression and I'll also pull them off and look at the piston so I don't waste my time doing a lot of other stuff, right? You gotta remember is these two strokes, if you didn't mix the fuel right or ran it dull chain or overheated it, you know, you can score a piston pretty easy, right? So 3 bolts, get the top cover off. Bam, bam. Not too bad in here, a little bit dirty. Looks like he put a little bit of oil on his filter, which isn't a good idea on these type. Best to wash them in hot soap and water. The flock type furry filters. Hot soap and water. Rinse it out with hot water and let them dry. Okay, let's get the spark plug out of it and see what it looks like. That might tell us if it's been lean, rich. It doesn't look bad. It's kind of browny looking. Not bad. We can just do a quick little physical spark check. Yeah, it's got spark on the plug. Some newer saws, if you want to really check spark properly, you should have the spark plug in and use a spark tester. But I do the old lay the plug on there. These ones don't normally have any issues with coils, but you never know, right? Okay, so we got spark. And we're going to check the compression just because you guys are watching me today. So we're going to check that out. I use the Echo Shindawa tester here. Seems to be the pretty accurate one for me. I got different adapters for the different plug sizes. It comes with a 10mm type adapter to do the newer style saws with the 10mm threaded plugs. Okay, so let's get that in there. Let's pull her over a few times. £130 compression. That should run. But even though you got compression like that, you know, your ring, you know, obviously isn't seized into the piston. I just quickly look at the piston anyways. It's only 2 bolts to take off, right? Just because. You just never know, man. It could be something going on. So these, having a plastic body too, only has a 2 bolts that hold the muffler on. There's your big huge screen inside there and whatnot. And there's our piston. Let me zoom you in and I can show you that. Okay, piston looks perfect. Okay, no problem, no scoring. Let's get back out here. So, gonna put the muffler back on. And you gotta watch these mufflers. They come loose and they burn the plastic housing, right? So what you want to do is just make sure that your inner bolt here is tight on these saws, and your upper one, you know, upper ones are going to be good too. I put a little Loctite on them, just because they don't rattle loose and burn that case up. A little bit of red Loctite, not a lot, just a dab. Okay, put this back on. Get her lined up. I hope everyone had a good week. I've been pretty busy. I'm trying to get caught up on some stuff that I've been lacking on. Got a fair bit done for the Walker Saw Shop for folks out there. I got Ron Hunter's 501 Echo I'm going to finish off hopefully this weekend. I broke a ring on it actually putting it together and had to order one in. So I'm going to get back at that so I can send him his 372 X-Torque and his Echo back to him. Okay, muffler's back on. That screen was in good shape too, by the way. Check your screens. Make sure they're not plugged up. There's the outlet. It's not a huge outlet, but let's just pry it open a little bit. Just a minor Walker eyes. Okay, so there we go. We know we got spark. The plug was fairly decent looking. It's a Bosch plug, a WS7F. Now there's one issue I don't like is you need to use the resistor plugs in these newer saws. Any of the new ones, pretty much you need to use ones with the R. Okay. So I'm going to put a new plug in for him. We're going to go with the BPM R8Y. And that's what I use. I don't have any BPM R7As right here right now, but this is just fine. Okay, let's get a plug in it. And I'm going to try to start it. I'm going to first look at the fuel in here and show you another quick test to do before you get too carried away with changing stuff that you don't need to. Probably no fuel in here. No, there isn't. I'm going to physically look inside the tank and look at the line, the fuel line. These fuel lines were terrible. They got really hard and brittle, and they broke really easy. Okay, they get holes in them and start sucking air. Right? Where's my fuel line puller? I must have left it over here. Okay, we'll just use this. Okay, let's get the fuel line out of it. Have a quick look, make sure it's not rotten. Come on out of there. Let's get the tap right out. Where's my little puller? We gotta find that, eh? It's not fun without it. Here, you can always use a wire with a little hook in it, right? Hook that in there, pull the line out, and physically have a quick look at the fuel filter and the line. It looks okay. It's still kind of whitish. It could be partially plugged, but the line doesn't look rotten. Let's check, and let's just put it back in now. Put our cap back on. I can see the line up top of the carburetor here. It looks all right there too. So let's just put a little bit of fuel in it and see if this thing will start up and run. If it doesn't, then we're going to carry on from there. swing you around the corner here. Over that way. Get some fuel in it. Try her out. I use the Aspen 2 fuel here. Just because it's not very, it doesn't smoke very much, it doesn't smell, it doesn't bug Shelly upstairs. So I get a little bit of fuel on it. Okay, choke on, switch on, let's try her out. Okay, no go. And empty the fuel out of it. If it was going to run, it should have started in that many pulls with the choke on. So now we know we have spark and we have a good piston. We're going to take the carburetor off and see what's going on with this thing. These are kind of odd, taking the carburetors off. They got a few different little screws to them that are a weird size. You have, first we'll get the air filter off so we can inspect the fuel hose a little better up top by the carburetor, and then get the carb off and look at the diaphragms and see if there's any stuff in it. Might have a hard diaphragm, metering one, so it won't let the fuel in, or a stuck needle valve. Okay, filter off, throttle off. Now normally on bigger saws, I'll be putting my carb tester onto the fuel line where the filter is and pump it up and make sure there's no holes in the fuel line or the carbs needle's not leaking. But these lines are so small in this thing, I don't have an adapter to even fit that. Okay, so let's just get the throttle off there now, and we're going to take this back piece off for the air filter. These have got normally a little Walbro WT carb on it. Yes, it does, so we'll go from there. I have a nice little snap-on set with some certain sockets, because these, like I say, these are a weird size. Like, I think it's not 5/16, I think it's 11/32, these little screws here. Nope, one bigger. Okay, let's go with 3/8. Nope. Huh. What do we got here? Is it metric? Yeah, it's a metric here. Let's go with 10 or 11. There we go. Sorry. Okay, so it's a 10 millimeter, which isn't all that different. It's the next screw that actually is the odd size one. I just forgot about that. I don't work on a lot of these. I have though, and my guys at the shop obviously do as well. So we get our back filter base off, and now there's the two screws here that are the odd size. Now it's coming back to me. It's been a while since I've done one. Get you in a little closer here. You can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so this one here is going to come off. I'm going to take our choke off first. Lever. Nothing ever comes out properly when you're trying to film something. Trying to show people something. We'll just leave that on for now. Let's get our adjustment sleeve off here, so we can get at the carburetor adjustments. This is old, hardened up too. It's a problem working on old saws that sat around. Everything's a bit rotten, a bit hard. Come on off there, you sucker. There we go. Get that off. Looking at the fuel line now, looks pretty good shape up top here. Doesn't look ripped. Okay. For curiosity's sake, we'll just check our settings of the carburetor. 1/2, 1, 1/2, 2, 2.5, almost 3 on the low speed. 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2 on the high speed. Not sure of the exact basic setting on these ones. It's been a while, but we'll just get this carburetor checked over and see what we can find. So these little screws, the 2 main bolt screws for the carburetor, are actually 9/32. Like I say, kind of an odd one, eh? A lot of people wouldn't have theirs in their normal toolbox. You'd have to have a nice little 1/4 inch set like this. Okay, we got that loose. We got two little bolts that anchor down the back of the carb here. I know everyone's gonna say, geez, you need to zoom in better so you can see what you're doing there. Okay, here we go. Okay, one screw has a ground wire for the switch, and the other screw is just another anchor screw. Kerplunk, get her in there. Kerplunk, hey, bucket says kerplunk. Okay, so we got our screws loose now for the carburetor. Take them out. Should use a K10 WAT carb kit or just a regular C. What's the other one called? It's not a complete kit. S10 or something. I don't know. I always use the complete kits. I don't buy just the regular diaphragm kits because you never know, you need a piece and you don't have it, right? And they're not that expensive. Most carb kits are, these days, everything's gone up as usual. Probably $25 for the carb kit. Okay, filter carb base off. Let's slide our fuel line off without ripping it. Here's our choke. Let's just pop that up. Okay. Just use needle nose and go behind the line and just kind of work it out, eh? So you don't rip it. There we go. Make sure your intake gasket's in good shape. Yes, it's got the pulse hole right there to run the fuel pump. And the line, yeah, looks in good shape. It's not rotten or anything in there. So now let's open up this carburetor and see what we got going on inside here. Obviously something's going on inside here, eh? I lay down a nice towel or a shop rag, right? So then I keep all the parts in one spot. Let's take our fuel pump side off first, which is the one screw. That's your fuel pump side where the fuel comes into the saw, right? These little carburetors are a very good carburetor. WATs have been on a lot of pieces of equipment. They work quite fine. It's dry inside, so we're not getting any fuel. There is some dirt in the screen of it. Now we'll check our other side of our metering side. There are the 4 screws, and this is where the gas gets metered into the circuits for the low speed and high speed and into the motor. So let's just have a quick check too of that fuel line, even though it was pretty dry. Let's just see if this actually has some flow to it. Oh yeah, there's no restriction there at all. So it's in the carburetor here is the problem. Okay, so we got our fuel pumps system right there and diaphragm. Our 2 screws here for our metering. Let's get the other 2 screws out and check out our diaphragm here. Like I say, these weren't the best saws, but they weren't that bad. Okay, that feels soft. Let's just check our needle now and see if it was stuck in there. Yeah, it is. Doesn't move up. So that's our problem. You can't. Oh, there we go. It's click. There, it's moving now. So now, you know what we're going to do now? We're just going to do something real quick. I got that freed up. So I'm going to put a little bit of lubricant in there, like WD-40 or penetrating oil. Just let it sit there for a second. Let it run down. Let's give our screen a little blowout because we know it had some little bit of debris in it, not a lot. Okay, that's clean now. All right, so let's put our fuel pump diaphragm back on first. It's nice and movable. It's not hardened up, so that should be moving fine with the pulsation. of the motor, and should pump the fuel from the tank into the motor now that we have the needle unstuck. Okay, so that side back on. Let's get our carb tester and just check our carb now. And another problem with that is it's got a real small fitting, so you gotta make sure you got the right line to go onto here. Oh, that feels tight enough. Okay, now it's going through, but we're leaking a bit because of this line doesn't fit too well on there. Let me grab my other carb tester. I have a couple different ones, and it's got a bit smaller of a line on it. Okay, that's better. Okay, check the tester, holding pressure, release pressure, pushing the metering lever down, or the fulcrum arm I call them. Yeah, holds pressure, and it's released. Okay, so we're just going to put this back together, put the settings close to what it was at, and go from there. So now on this side, something you also want to check if you got the right tools, which I do, is you want to check the metering lever height. It's like adjusting the float on a car carburetor. Okay, so on the Walbro gauge here, you have every different carburetor model that Walbro's made. So this is a WT. Okay, and we're going to set it on here and check our lever height without the gasket on, by the way. So to me, it's a little bit low, and I can physically see that. It should be kind of even with this body on these ones. Okay, so I'm going to just pry that up just a little bit. Check it with the gauge again. Yeah, just touching it. Okay, so that's what you want. So if it's up too far, the saw will run richer and flood a bit maybe, or if it's down too low, it will run too lean and not get enough fuel. So yeah, let's put this back together now. On this side of the carburetor, on the metering side, is the gasket first, then the diaphragm. And the fuel pump side is opposite. The diaphragm goes first, then the gasket. We're just going to get this back on there. Just had a call from a fellow that watches my channel down in California. Told him I was just down there a couple months ago with those raging fires there around Los Angeles. That was terrible. Hope everyone recovered okay from that, and hopefully you had insurance on your house. Okay, he's sending me a 461 still to do, and he's got a few saws, a 661, 461, and 462. Okay, so get our screws on, tighten them up. I would like to do a video of tuning the carburetor, adjusting it, so maybe we can do that today here. And I'm going to just kind of educate you on how they sound rich and how they sound lean, right? This gas cap was leaking like crazy too, so you know what? I'm just going to grab another one for Ernie and put on here. The O-ring's no good. That's why I keep old saws around. I always need something, you know. It's always handy having a bit of a boneyard that has some decent stuff in it. Okay, so that one looks like it's going to seal better. We're just going to leave it loose for now. Just a tad until we get everything back going here. Okay, so let's get the carburetor back on. Let's hook up our fuel line. Back on there. Slide her all the way on there. Okay, get our choke control back. It's in the box here. Hook it to the carburetor. Raining outside again. Yesterday was a nice day. I showed you on a video, but god darn it, it was just beautiful. The door wasn't open, the heater wasn't on, but I went to go somewhere, and right then it started to hail here and snow. Unbelievable. Like, went from one extreme to the other. Okay, so get our gasket. Make sure you get the gasket lined up properly. You want to have your little pulse hole fitting the hole there, lined up on the carburetor to where the feed hole is. Okay, so these actually have a little kind of a couple of holes that they can you can put on here that kind of hold the gasket in place while you're putting it on. So we're gonna get that just like there. It's kind of nice because then you don't lose the position of it, okay? So there you go. It's on there. There's your feed hole there. And then your feed hole on the carburetor here, okay? So let's just set the carburetor in here, get our choke in its position. Get our little carb anchor back in there, the carb plate, and our 2 carb screws. Put them in, get kind of one started. You guys see me, normally I have a headlamp, flashlight on my head. It's kind of nice to have working on these little saws. Okay, so get our carburetor lined up. Get your screws started. Okay, just wind them in by hand. Make sure that the fuel line isn't obstructed behind the carb and gets pinched or anything. Okay. Then we're gonna take our what do we come up with? Our 9/32. Tighten the carburetor back up. Then our 2 back screws that will hold the carb plate down. Okay, and our Phillips screwdriver and our 2 little screws. One for the ground of the switch wire, and one to anchor it on that side. If you don't have the ground one in, your switch isn't gonna work. Then you're gonna take all this apart again. Which ain't a lot. You know, saws aren't that hard to work on. Once you get used to them, you know the routine. You get little tricks here and there of routing stuff right and how to do it quicker, right? Okay, so there we go. The carb's back on. Let's put our general settings kind of back to what I kind of think it should be. 1, 1.5. Let's go with 2. So I think these actually were about like that. Half, 1, 1.5, 2, half, 1, 1.5, 2. And we'll adjust it from there. So I'm gonna go back out, put gas in it now, and see if actually that did it. If it did, that was a pretty easy fix. Not all that hard. Put that same fuel back in it. I took it out just so it doesn't leak all over the tank, all over the bench, right? Okay. Okay, we got fuel in it. Choke on, switch on. There you go. That's all it was a stuck needle in the carburetor. Could have been other things, but that's all it was on this. That wasn't that hard of a fix. But I'll just, obviously I couldn't rev it by hand because I didn't put the throttle rod back on, by the way. But we know it runs now, so what I'm going to do now is fasten it back up, check his chain out, and we'll start it up again and run it and tune the carburetor. Okay, get the throttle rod back on. And when you don't have the top cover on these, this throttle rod will hop out of there, okay? So you got to have that top cover on to run it properly, but you can quickly run it, but if it'll just vibrate and hop out of there, okay? See? Just boop, away it comes out. Okay, so let's get our other plate back on here, the filter housing, and that was a 10 millimeter for that. Some people, if you don't have the type of tools that I have, like T-wrenches with that, then you're just gonna have to use a regular socket, right? I find these T-wrenches really handy. I have them in 8 millimeter, 10 millimeter, all my metric sizes for Husqvarna, and of course Torx ones that Still and a lot of the new Huskies use now. The Torx screws are the best screws made, man. You don't strip them. The T-wrenches last a long time. Some of these T-wrenches here, these Weehaw ones, I've had for like 20 years, man. They're just good. You buy those cheap sets and the ends of them all round out right away, right? You strip bolts, it's terrible. Okay, let's just blow this air filter out a little bit. You had like K&N oil on it or something, so that'll make it run a little rich. I'm going to clean that properly actually, but we'll just get the back together here for now. Okay, so let's inspect this bar and chain. We know the air filter will go back on in a minute, and let's check this bar and chain out. This is low pro 3/8 chain. Bar itself looks pretty decent. It's not bent. It's wore a little bit on the one side, so I'm going to flip it upside down so we get the better wearing side on it. Chain looks great. Looks like brand new. Yep, it is brand new. You can't even, the drivers don't even have any wear on it. So we get our chain, loop it over our sprocket, onto the bar, pull it out, tension it up a bit. Make sure it's turning fine, right? Which it is. And we'll get our side cover on. And I'll ask Ernie, I'll email him in a little bit here and see if he wants the chain brake to work. Okay? Safety first. Always good to have. Actually got that 2100 there, a fella bought from the US off a dealer up here, and it got shipped to me. That 2100's got a chain brake. Now they're hard to find. So if you got, and trying to find a band for those these days. People are always asking, looking for chain brake bands for older Huskies. Really hard to get these days. I don't see a lot of aftermarket ones out there either. Actually, I did have a aftermarket side cover and chain brake on a 61 that Tom Walker brought here, but that thing was junk. It just really, it kicked on so easy all the time. It was terrible. You couldn't use the saw like that. So there's another disappointing aftermarket product. Okay, get your nuts ran on there. Just kind of get them so they're touching. Back them off just a quarter turn. Pull your chain up, get all the slack out of it. Make sure it's still turning around good. Now you can adjust the adjuster to the chain. Kind of touches the bar. Lift up on the bar. I always do. It's a habit. Every logger does it. Lift up on the bar. Tension it now to the chains just touching. Okay. Then tighten your nuts. Okay. Throw them on there. Make sure it's spinning good. Yeah, no problem. So now we're just going to put our top cover back on so that throttle doesn't fall out again. And we'll run it one more time. And then I'll clean that filter properly and put back on the saw. Just want to make sure that it starts up again okay here. These type of screws on these Poulans and Huskies like this with the kind of captive thing, kind of turn the screw backwards first so you feel it kind of get into its spot, then turn them in. Sometimes people just jam them in there and they break the little little nut that's, or the little captive nuts that are in there, okay? Just back them off, get them till they're started, and then screw them in. Okay? So we set that general setting at 2 turns each. Let's see how it starts up and runs now. And we'll just adjust it a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a minute. With the chainsaw, adjusting the carburetor, you got to have a good ear. A lot of people will use tacks with the newer ones that have rev limiter ignition, so you can set the RPM properly, so you're not leaning it out too much. On a rev limiter ignition versus a non, you know, it's only going to rev, say, 13,000 RPM. So you back the high speed off until so it's rich, eh? Then turn it until you hit 13, but don't turn it in anymore because you're just going to let it run lean and it's not going to rev anymore. So you're going to overheat the motor, and a lot of people do that. So let's just go check it out now. Open the door again so we don't get her all stinky in here, and see how it goes. Been a long video, but this is how I would do it if I was at a regular shop and not the underground area, right? Okay, we'll choke it. Fires, choke off. had to adjust the idle down. Obviously it was too high. Chain was spinning like that. So I turned the idle down so the chain stops. It's got good response to it, but I can hear that it's rich on the high end. So you listen to it now, how it changes, okay? There you go. Could you kind of hear that? Changed a bit. I didn't lean it out too much. I don't want to run these lean because you don't need to. The gas is more power, and it's not stupid rich. It's just right. The chain loosened up some, and had to turn the idle down a little bit more. You know, I should doing a service on this. I'm going to take this actually back off. I forgot one thing, and I'm going to show you how to grease the clutch bearing on it. I should have done that when I had it apart, but I was getting too involved with the carburetor. So now I know with that air filter now, if I put that on there, the way it was all with that K&N filter oil on it, it's going to be even richer. And you know what? That's okay, but it's not right. Okay. We're going to get our bar and chain back off here. And you do need a special tool to get the clutch off on these. You can use a punch and a hammer, and you got to remember this is a left-hand thread. So righty loosey, lefty tighty. Okay, bar and chain's off, and I'll just do a quick little demonstration and get the clutch off and greasing the clutch bearing. It's not bad, it's rolling okay, but I'm going to put some grease on it anyways. Okay, I should have the right tool here somehow. Huh. Not quite the right one. Where is it? Where is it? Yeah, that one will work. Okay. We get our impact out. Get it on there. Okay. There it comes. Check your spring. It's in good shape. You can already pull on it. And yeah, there's our little clutch bearing in there. They're built into the drums on these. So the washer's on first. Get a little bit of grease on here. And get some out of this thing. Here we go. Okay. Get it in there. Work it around a little bit. Okay. Put that back on. Our spacer washer back on. Your clutch back on. And do not run these without the bar and chain back on it, okay? Tighten this up with the tool a bit, then run it and hit the brake if it had a brake, but this one doesn't. So I'm going to be real careful with it. But I'm going to call Ernie right now and see if he wants a chain brake band back in there. But yeah, that's how I would service a saw and get her running at a dealership or at my home here. So hopefully you guys picked up on that. If not, give me a comment. I'll help you out. But yeah. Doesn't take that long, eh? You know, would have taken a little bit longer if I would have had to put like maybe a kit in it or a fuel line or something. But on these, they're really famous for those fuel lines to be rotted and broken, eh? So just always check that stuff first. Remember, your fuel system is number one, just like the compression and spark was. So start from the fuel filter right up to the carburetor. That's the lung in the engine. You got to keep her going. It's got to breathe and get the fuel to it. Anyways, it's TGIF. Have a great day. I'll email Ernie here in a second and get back to doing some more saws. I got a 572 to do, a 592, and an 026. So have a great Friday. We'll catch you all later. Have a good day.